for you. We're going to be discussing, a bunch of sports going on. Especially, this is going to be our first edition of the UC chat for you guys. We're going to be diving into Blackhawks, diving into Bulls action as well. And then we're not going to forget, the Bears, head coaching search. We'll dive into that as well. And this will be a fun one, but it's going to give you guys some like early draft predictions for the Bears as well today. But, you guys know my name's Tyler. I'm joined alongside
Daniel. How we doing?
What's up,
it's
man?
good to be back.
How are you, man?
I'm doing fantastic. It's good to be back to this original, type consistency that we used to back in our Radio DePaul days. So if those of you that have known us back when we first started doing this, this is kind of the way we originally did it. We just covered a little bit of every sport. But obviously the Bears took a stronghold on us, and we wanted to, show them our full attention and appreciation from this last season. But seeing the way it ended, we're very excited to get back into the other sports that we have roaming around here, because there's another teams. I mean, realistically, we're all the teams are playing a bit mediocre, but we're going to cover and go into depth into how the seasons look so far, especially for the UC chat. I'm very excited for that. That's been something that we've been cooking up for a while now. So it's good to be back into this original program.
It's going to be fun, man. No, I'm obviously, Bears is like what we started on this year and this season. So that took up a lot of our time. Like talking about the Bears. It was, some weeks were a little fun talking about them. Other weeks, probably like 9 weeks in a row, were a bit rough for the Bears talking about. But, we're always ride or die with our teams, especially when it's the Bears or anything like that. But, so basically, we're going to start you guys off with the UC chat to United Center chat. We're going to start you guys off talking a little bit about Bulls, talking a little bit about Blackhawks as well. Obviously, we're not going to dive into every game they already had. There are a bunch of these teams already played. I think how many games were I right down? Like
it's almost halfway through the season, really. Yeah,
almost halfway through that season. So, we're going to basically dive into those, talk about Bulls and Blackhawks. Then we'll steer away from that at the end of the podcast, and we'll kind of dive a little bit into Bears action because, we'll always kind of keep the Bears action around because there is that head coaching search right now. So let's get kicked off right away with our UC chat. We're going to get right into the Bulls. Dan, you want to kick us off with a little bit of Bulls talk?
Yeah, so let's dive into the Bulls here, right? So we've covered a lot of the Bear stats. So we're going to do a very similar job from what we did there week to week, but mainly just covering the full half of the season. So the Bulls currently, I believe they played a game last night that they did lose. So let me just get the real-time
I watched
real-time standings.
I watched a few quarters of that game that popped up yesterday. So the Bulls yesterday, they played the Atlanta Hawks. I watched, I believe, a third quarter, a little bit of the fourth quarter as well. Bulls right now are in a little bit of a slump. It's looking like, it's kind of the only player. I'm not saying the only player helping out with this team right now, but one of the players that is really contributing a lot right now is Zach LaVine. Zach LaVine has been doing really well. Yesterday, he failed to get up to 20 points, which was not good for the Bulls because they needed him to help out as much as possible. Also with that, there's another player kind of slumping right now with the Bulls, kind of talk about him. That would be Kobe White. Kobe White is not doing too well with the Bulls right now. He, I believe yesterday was the second game in a row. He went 1 for 8 from 3-pointer, bit off. I saw Casey Johnson's tweet. He was talking about that.
A bit of a cold season for Kobe here.
A little bit of a cold. Yeah. So right now, the Bulls are saying right now in 10th place in the Eastern Conference. So that's kind of that borderline. Are they going to make the play-in tournament / are they going to be out of the play-in tournament? This seems like kind of how it was last year.
Yeah, the last three games or last 3 years, we've all been at this point in the season. We've been at 19, 18, and 18 wins. So the past 3 years have been very mediocre. Currently, the Bulls are 18 and 23. They're on a 3-game losing streak. We played Atlanta last night. Obviously, 10th in the Eastern Conference. It's not good. It's not bad.
Yeah.
If for those of you who do know and wondering what side we are rooting on, I'm rooting for the Bulls to lose out this season. I'm rooting for the Bulls to lose as many games to try to get that first-round draft pick that we got in the DeMar DeRozan sign-and trade from San Antonio. San Antonio does not need that first-round lottery pick. We do need that first-round lottery pick, so it would be very nice to get that back. But going into some other stats here, as I read off these stats, they're not going to seem that bad to you, right? They're going to seem pretty good. 118.1 points per game. That is 4th in the league overall.
It's not bad at all, man.
That's pretty darn good.
When Zach LaVine, the last 6-7 games, when he put up 30 plus, each game, that obviously helped contribute to points per game. And they did get a few good wins against some teams. A few weeks ago, Derrick Rose night, they beat the Knicks, best team. Actually, some people say best team in the league right now. Right now playing how they are. But fourth overall with 118.1 points per game. That's not bad for the Bulls right now. But other categories are kind of they're a
little more middle of the pack, and some better than worse. Obviously, the next one here is going to be rebounds per game at 45.6. That's 7th in the league. which is contributing a lot to the Jalen Smith and Vucevic backcourt that they have going on.
Yeah.
Those are two really tall guys, and they're averaging 10 points or 10 rebounds every time they hop into that game and play more than 12 minutes. So the next one is 47% field goal percentage. So that is 12th in the league. Not incredible, but definitely higher in the standings than other teams. And then this is probably the most impressive stats, 29.5 assists per game. That is tied for third in the league overall. That is a really good pickup from the way last year went, and knowing that losing Alex Caruso, getting Josh Giddey, we knew that some assists were going to turn out a little bit better.
Yeah.
Lonzo Ball coming back. So third overall in the league is really good for a team that has 6 point guards, right? Like it's a very, very impressive stat. But then you look at the other side of the ball. In the decision of the Josh Giddey Alex Caruso trade, the defensive rating for the Bulls is 20th overall, which makes sense. Vucevic is quite soft. Zach LaVine isn't a huge defender. Lonzo Ball, you can't help have him guard someone for 12 minutes each night. So I definitely understand where the Bulls standings look like comparative to their stats. They're a great offensive weapon. Defensively, we're bottom of the board.
Yeah, we've noticed that with this team, especially this year, last year as well, when this team moves the ball around, they get the assists up. Obviously they're tied for third overall right now in the whole entire league. This team, that's usually the games that they get their wins at. Against the Knicks, they had a lot of, assists, kind of going back to that game with Derrick Rose night. A bunch of other games, as well. There was a game, I believe it was last week where they played, or 2 weeks ago, they played the Wizards. They lost to the Wizards pretty bad. I think they lost by 30 points to one of the worst teams in the league, in the Wizards. But then, the next week they did come back beating them 30 points. When they get to move the ball around, when certain players aren't, selfish on this team, wanting to take every single shot, when Zach can pitch the ball and some people can pitch to Zach LaVine, Kobe White has a good night too. That's what we notice. If Kobe White does have a good night, then the Bulls end up being better. Obviously what happens with them.
Definitely. He's such a big scoring entity to this offense. So yeah, when you're right, like if he's making 3 out of 3 threes in a game, yeah, that's a pretty good stat line for the Bulls there. And that's usually going to give us a lead. So I agree with you on that. He's a big contributor.
I see a comment in the chat right here. We say the best part of the week right here. Best sports takes out here. This pod will feed families for generations. 2 absolute beauties. Appreciate it, Peter. We always appreciate when you're joining.
At the end of this year, we'll have to give a fan of the year award. So stay tuned, Peter. Because if you keep having these kind of messages, you might just get that award from us. So thank you, Peter, for always.
We always appreciate it, Peter. So kind of, steering away from, obviously the whole entire team stats. Let's go into individual stats for the Bulls. Team season leaders right now. So the player on the Bulls, no shocker, leading the team in points per game. This was kind of, a big year for this player because, obviously we traded DeMar DeRozan in the offseason to the Sacramento Kings. He was pretty much our leading scorer last year. Him and this player basically bounced back and forth. This player putting up 30, sometimes this player putting up 12. That would be Zach LaVine. Zach LaVine putting up right now. He's leading the team at 24 points per game. Good for Zach. Obviously this was the year that he had to step up because no more DeMar. This is now his team to basically, take over.
Yeah, and since January 4th, he is projected 29.9 each game, which is pretty impressive. Pretty much 30 points each game.
He didn't even get close to.
He did not get close to that. Yeah,
18. I saw Peter is actually texting me and he said that he bet Zach LaVine 20 plus and he got to like 18. Of course, the one game. Sorry, sucks. Peter. Bad beat through. Yeah. It was a bad beat. He should have gotten 20 at least on that. But so now rebounds per game. This probably shouldn't shock anybody because he's probably the only big man starting on our team right now that actually knows how to rebound the ball is Nikola Vucevic. He has averaging right now 10.2 rebounds per game. Good for Vuce. He is playing on right now an all-star type of year right now. He is doing very well. He notices the chatter, that's going on with the, obviously, players are like, especially in Chicago, all these fans are like trade this player, especially if they have one bad game. Some of these people are like, trade them because this is not how they're, panning up to be. But Vuce is playing very well right now. We notice some with Vuce is that when he doesn't shoot the ball, like 3-pointers at least take 7 threes a game. That usually means that the Bulls will win that game, and B, he gets more rebounds because he's more in the paint, and that's why his point, obviously, rebounds per game is the most.
Yeah, that's why I called him soft earlier because I know him in the perimeter when he's shooting, he's usually missing his shots, even though this year he has a way better 3-point percentage he had last year. I think last year he was like 26%, which is one of the worst for centers in the league. And then his defense isn't particularly strong, so he's not getting the blocks on the team. but when he is in the paint, he is such a team player that the team really evolves around him. And that's why I enjoyed his presence this season, is that everyone's talking these trades, but he, at the end of the day, he's quiet, he's humble, he's the first one in, last one out, and he really is doing his job to the fullest this season. So I agree with you. As if he's not playing at an all-star caliber, he's at least close.
And if we didn't have Vooch right now, I think the Bulls would be dead last in the league right now. We'd be saying we're right around where the Wizards are, because we need rebounds, and he's basically the only guy right now in this team getting those rebounds. Patrick Williams isn't helping out too much with that rebound category. And obviously, we do have players on the bench that are saying, but those are the bench players right now, Jalen Smith and a few other people. But yeah, so now assists per game. This might shock a few of you guys, because a lot of you guys, but some of you guys may not shock. Assists per game right now, the leader for the Bulls right now is Josh Giddey at 6.9 assists per game. Very nice. That's a very nice number right there. But
very nice number.
Josh Giddey, yeah. So obviously, new addition in the offseason, getting traded Alex Caruso for Josh Giddey. That was a big trade. I know a lot of Bulls fans were very upset by that. But, thinking about it back when it happened, Alex Caruso was a player that was getting injured a lot. He always, I'm not saying he's a defensive only type of player, but his scoring was not as good as what it could have been.
Yeah, he would average like 5 or 6 a game, right? So
and the steals, and basically the steals, the blocks, and his defensive presence on the court is basically what the Bulls have him for. And he did get traded, for Josh Giddey in the offseason. And he did sign that, I think, about a month ago now, he signed a huge extension with the OKC. I think it's like $80 million. Good for Caruso. He does deserve it.
Good for Caruso, yeah.
He was a great player on the Bulls when he was here.
He's one of the best plus-minus players in the whole NBA. If he's on the court, he's helping your team. And I really did appreciate the time in Chicago, but unfortunately, $80 million for me for a player like that's kind of entering a slight retool, if not a rebuild. I don't think he was the right move. And saying that, I mean, we did pay Patrick Williams, so I'm thinking there was a little bit of in and out. So I would have had Caruso. I would have rather paid Caruso than paid Patrick Williams, but as we're seeing that now, it's not, a lot of it's not going to matter in the way that the Bulls look in 2 seasons. I think there's going to be a lot of changes coming up.
Yeah, but obviously, Josh Giddey, this was a player that a lot of people are like, are the Bulls going to sign him to an extension before the season started? And the Bulls did not come to a deal with Josh Giddey. They wanted him to probably play out his first year, see how he plays in a new uniform with the Chicago Bulls, and figure out kind of what's going on with him. He's been playing, I'd say the good. He's been playing all right. That's all I can say. I expected a little bit more from him, maybe a little bit more in in the scoring category. But you do have Zach LaVine on this team that could help this team out, in the long run stuff. But Josh Giddey leading the team in assist point game, that is a good stat for him. That's all I gotta say.
Yes, Josh Giddey, I think he's evolving into that starting point guard role for us. Defensively, though, he's pretty bad. So I'm thinking if he's not the starting point guard for us next season, he's definitely going to be the best 6th man in the Eastern Conference. He's going to be one of them because his scoring ability and his passing ability is out of this world. So I definitely see him, being a good position for the Bulls in the long term.
Yeah. Yeah. And now leader steals per game is the same guy we were just talking about, Josh Giddey. He's leading the team right now, 1.1 steals per game. So good for Josh Giddey on the defensive side of the ball too. He's a great defensive player as well. He just needs to get his feet moving a little bit more sometimes, but good for Josh Giddey in the steals department. And the last stat we have for you guys for the seasons for the Bulls is blocks per game. This might shock you guys. He's not a starting player. He's not Vooch. It's not Patrick Williams. It's actually our rookie that we got in. Well, I forgot what pick we had. What pick did we have, Dan? It was like
it was the 11th pick.
11th pick for like the 4th year in a row. It's so. Is that's a stat?
I must swerve, hit that corner. Whoa. Sorry.
Oh
You'll see in the comment.
I didn't even see the comment.
I don't like the song, but I think it's super catchy.
You know who loves this song is the guy. So he's actually the stage manager for the Chicago Bulls, and he actually is the PA announcer for Wrigley Field. Jeremiah Paprocki loves this song.
Yeah, I follow him on Twitter.
He posts this song a lot on Instagram and stuff like that, and he's a big fan of this song. So that's who I see, saying that song all the time. But I have not listened to the song yet, man. I don't know.
I haven't listened to it either, but it's all over social media and it's hard to avoid. So it is catchy.
But so going back to it, the player leading blocks right now, which we could steer from after this, is Matthias Buzelis, who he's leading this team at 0.8 blocks per game. So almost a block per game. So good for Buzelis. He's been performing really well. Starting the season, he was up and down from Windy City Bulls to the Chicago Bulls. Now it's looked like he's going to maintain that roster spot on the Bulls. So good for him.
All right, so now we can kind of now that we gave you some season leaders here, we can give you some season highlights. So things that have happened this season, whether you're following or not, we've kind of explained a little bit as to why this was such an impactful part of the season. Judging that it's just the halfway mark, there's a lot of more things to happen on, so we'll definitely cover those once it happens. But here are some of the big things, that I know we should recap here. So first one here, I think for Tyler and I, this was a huge deal for someone that grew up watching this team on national TV every single season and them just actually killing the opponent. It was Derrick Rose night on the 4th of January, and the 4th of January will always be known as Derrick Rose Day. Obviously, for those of you who celebrated, I waited in a 5-hour line to meet Derrick Rose at the Derrick Rose the
flower
rose
shop.
The flower rose shop. Unfortunately, I got like within 45 people before he had to leave at a strict deadline of 4 p.m. So I wouldn't call it necessarily a waste of time because I did get to bring out my Derrick Rose book and I read it. I had like a little book club with the other people in line.
Oh, see, that's awesome, man. Yeah.
The people in front of me were from St. Louis. They were going to fly in for Derrick Rose, the game versus New York, when they found out that he was having a pop-up shop. So this family of 4 people and 2 sons left early their flights to wait in a 5-hour line to also not meet Derrick Rose. So it just shows you how important to people that you've never met before in cities you've never been to before also have appreciation for the same person.
Yeah. This was a great day, being obviously a Bulls fan. Derrick Rose, a lot of people are probably going to say what I'm saying, but he was my favorite player growing up because he's probably, obviously, I know he was one of your favorite players growing up too, alongside, Bet Gordon and a few other players that were on this team, Luol Dane. But Derrick Rose really did mean a lot to the city of Chicago. He, obviously being drafted number 1 overall, it was trying to figure out who's going to be drafted number 1 by the Bulls. Would it be Derrick Rose or I forgot the
Michael Beasley?
Michael Beasley, that's who it was. Yeah, it was either going to be him or Michael Beasley. It was back and forth. Derrick Rose I was working at the Chicago Sports Network the day before Derrick Rose night. We taped for the Chicago Lead, one of our shows. We taped a whole entire Derrick Rose honored show about him. And one of his former players, Tim Flowers, who played with him at Simeon, came in and we interviewed him and talked about.
Very cool.
He got really emotional about the whole entire thing. He was like, this is he's like, you have no idea how much this means to Derrick, representing the city of Chicago, being honored by the city. He had no idea that the city would draft him. He had a feeling, but Tim said he had no idea that they were for sure going to take him. They really thought they were going to take Michael Beasley, but he did amazing, for the Bulls. Obviously very unfortunate what happened to him with, injuries and stuff like that. If injuries didn't happen, I think this team could have potentially won a chip at one point. But
I think so too.
It was, I was actually in Wisconsin that weekend, so I did not get a chance to catch the game that night. But the next day I did watch the whole entire ceremony at halftime. It was a great ceremony. It was awesome. But
yeah, what was so funny is that I also was not in town. I was actually working at Madison Square Garden. I was at Madison Square Garden the night of Derrick Rose night. So I think that was still a pretty decent memory for me because, again, working inside Madison Square Garden, I was in the arena and everything. So it was absolutely beautiful. But that was a weird feeling because I was running around with my Bulls hat. If for those of you that follow me on Instagram and saw my photos, the entire day during Rose Day and the day after, I was wearing my Bulls hat all over Madison Square Garden and all the workers there. Apparently, there's a rule in Madison Square Garden that if you work there, you can wear any uniform you want, but it has to have a team logo. So it could be a Knicks, Rangers, it could be a Jets. It has to have a New York team on there. You can wear any uniform.
You didn't tell me about this. Oh my
God.
God.
So every single worker there was wearing their company shirts, and then their hat was like a Jets hat or a Rangers hat.
Wow. Okay.
And obviously I'm walking in, also doing my day there, working there, and I'm wearing my Bulls hat. And so everyone was very upset, but I think everyone understood that you show appreciation, and it wasn't for Knicks versus Bulls. It was for Derrick Rose. So they all understood that appreciation. But that was really huge. That was a huge day. That was so much fun.
I didn't even know. Dude, that's awesome, man. Wow.
Really cool stuff. And so obviously for those of you who may know, the reason why it's so important is because we root for Derrick Rose because we wanted his legacy to be forever cemented in Chicago. If not in Chicago, then in just the sport of basketball. He is going to have his jersey retired at the 2025-26 season, which is exciting. That's exactly all I wanted. And now I feel as if other sports are deteriorating, right? The Bears had not so great of a season. This is what picked me back up. This is what gave me all the inspiration I needed for Chicago sports. He is the guy. He's the one, like you said, he got me into sports, not just basketball, into every sport. So it's nice to have him there. I was at a Blackhawks game recently, and I was looking up at the rafters when I realized that this time next year, I'll be looking up at the rafters, and there'll be an extra number up there.
You can sign me up for that day, man. Whenever they retire it, I think we'll
I'd like
plan
to
a
be
day.
there too.
We'll definitely go to that. But I think I kind of told you guys about this. Casey, I was talking to Casey Johnson for the Chicago Sports Network Bulls Insider about this, and he was like, I was like, this was before they announced it. I'm like, what are the odds that they're going to announce, Derrick Rose jersey retirement? It's like, I personally don't know anything. They haven't told me anything yet, but this is what they told me. They said, these are the 3 reasons why he should have his jersey retired. Number 1, he was, born and raised in Chicago. Then he got drafted number 1 by, Chicago. And number 2, they basically said because when he got drafted, he shifted this whole entire, the team. They finally got this team back on the map, became a playoff team and everything like that. And number 3, he won the MVP his rookie season, youngest rookie ever, over LeBron in his prime.
Yeah.
That's why he should have his jersey retired. And I looked at Casey. I'm like, those are 3 great reasons. I did think about I was like, oh, I was on the fence about it, but I'm all about it. I don't think anyone else should wear number 1. Every time I think of number 1, I think of Derrick Rose.
I agree.
Every single time.
I agree.
And yeah. So
that's 100% true. And this comment I really liked because a little jab at New York. I mean, hey, in the comment sections we could do it. I'm obviously I love the city of New York, but the teams of New York, I understand their we're not too far off from the way New Yorkers feel about their teams, so we're hopefully in the up and up. Let's see how that goes here. But
I feel the same way about that, Peter. I do. I think I kind of told you about it. New York sports are one of the sports teams that I unfortunately dislike the most. LA's got to be number 2 up there. Everybody has their teams they dislike. A lot of people hate
Boston.
Philly teams and stuff like that.
Yeah,
a lot of people hate Boston and stuff like that. But so kind of steering away from Derrick Rose, we could talk about Derrick Rose for hours and hours. Lonzo Ball. This was a big deal for him because, he came back from an injury this season. We didn't know he got 3 surgeries, man. We didn't know if he was going to come back at all whatsoever. Lonzo Ball last week got put in the starting lineup for the first time since 2021, which is a great accomplishment by him. I read that and I was like, he deserves it, man. He plays exactly like he did before his injury. I'm watching him.
He does. He's very similar. I love his play style. He really is he's filling in the Alex Caruso role immediately, which is really impressive. And I'm just really proud of Lonzo. The fact that he did this all while also on national television being told that he can't walk or jump or he'll never play basketball again, to coming back in his contract. It's still his 4th year of his contract, and he's still putting up really good numbers. And from a standpoint of if he remains a Bull, I'd be happy. If he's a trade target, then that's also I'm really happy because that just means that his career is carrying on. He's still playing. So it's really impressive to see, especially in the starting lineup.
Especially when Billy's he's progressing. A lot of coaches said he's progressing. We didn't know if he would potentially get back on the court. This is an injury that not Kobe had. Brandon Roy had. It's the same exact entire knee injury that ended his whole entire career. We never got to really see the full potential of Brandon Roy. It was only a few years, and then he busted his knee. Lonzo coming back from I don't even want to say that word. Arthroscopic. Looking at his knee, whatever that injury, it was great seeing Lonzo come back. I was very happy seeing him back. Obviously, one of the highlights that I've had in the Bulls, for me watching the Bulls was going to opening day the year that we got DeMar, Lonzo, and everything. We killed the Pelicans by 20 points. It was I didn't expect them to happen. And obviously that was a year that we made the play-in turn. Was this play?
Yeah, we were the first seed at All-Star Weekend.
That's
right.
We
were the first seed.
Yeah. So that was a fun year. So good for Lonzo. Really excited about him.
Yeah, DeMar and Levine were All-Stars. Oh, that was such a good year.
That was cool. So we got a few more things for you before we wrap up Bulls talk for you guys. This was really fun. Obviously, last week you probably saw it all in the media. When the Bulls played the Spurs, we actually, we had a great comeback by them. I think it was an 18-point comeback by the Spurs, if I recall correctly. Huge comeback. We didn't know if we'd win that game or not. Kobe White had a great 4th quarter. He had a clutch 3-point shot. He had a few layups. He drove past Wemby, but also he didn't just drive past Wemby. He basically slammed on Wemby, man.
He put him on a poster.
I know Wemby was late on it, man, but if you're 7'4" and you're late to some, you could still block a shot.
It's a highlight, and that might be the best highlight of the season just because of who Wemby is and because of the stats of the game. Kobe won us that game with that play. It was completely undrawn. It wasn't a a play that Billy drew up or anything like that. It was Kobe getting the ball after a blocked shot and him running into the paint, dunking it right on Wemby. That was an impressive play because a guy like Kobe shouldn't be dunking. And I'm sure you saw the John Morant dunk on Wembanyama yesterday. They were both in the same tier. Only difference is that Kobe White did it to advance us to win the game after a 19-point deficit. So really impressive stuff from Kobe. His season hasn't come up to the way it's supposed to be. Obviously, a lot of trade targets and trade talks and stuff like that. But I love Kobe. He is the face of the Chicago Transit. He is on every blue line. He is on every red line. He is on every Chicago bus for Midwest Medical. So it's good to have a face of Chicago somewhat in the downtown area. So Kobe is that guy.
Yeah. Yeah, so a few more things for you guys, a few more fun facts with the Bulls right now. Josh Giddey is 10th in the NBA in triple doubles this season, so good for Josh Giddey. That was a big part of training for him. His double doubles and his triple doubles, so good for Josh Giddey. The last thing we got for you guys is that Zach LaVine became the player with the most 3-point field goals in Bulls franchise history with 1,110, which. He's been on the team for a little while now, obviously. Yeah. So that was a stat that I did not see him, when he came to the team. I did not know that he would beat the Bulls 3-point field goal percentage marker. But
yeah, dude, it's crazy to think he passed up Kirk Heinrich, which Kirk Heinrich was on the Bulls for, I believe it was 10.5 seasons. And Zach LaVine, I think, has done it in, 6? He's done it in 6 or 7.
It's crazy.
We weren't even his first team. We were his second team. We did get him from the Minnesota deal, but it is really cool to see him solidified in Bulls history. I don't see this getting passed up anytime soon unless Kobe plays 20 years in Chicago. So Zach LaVine is your new best 3-point shooter in Bulls history. So
good props to him. Man. Yeah. So now to wrap up Bulls talk, man, let's just kind of halfway through the season. Let's talk about what do you think right now are the biggest disappointments right now with the Bulls? Obviously, we can talk about them being a 10th seed, right now, the 10th seed being on the borderline of, the play-in tournament and, being basically eliminated. It seems like this has been like for the 3rd year in a row. What do you think are some disappointments, man, right now?
My first one to say the trade value, the trade market at the moment. I mean, Zach LaVine is playing at such a high value. You at least want to see other teams looking for him, and not just the Nuggets being like, "Hey, let's give you Michael Porter Jr. and a player that's worth $12 million that's not playing any minutes." That's not going to cut it for the Bulls right now, and I think that is one of the biggest disappointments for me right now. Is I think we have such a rich roster, and everyone knows that the Bulls are willing to sell. We're not trying to win any championships this season, so I just wish that teams, like Golden State, like the Kings, like LA, would kind of push themselves to acquire a lot of the players on our team to help themselves, because they would advance these teams to become more contenders. So that's one of my biggest disappointments so far.
Yeah. I think another disappointment right now, man, is just because obviously the big, contract we gave him in the offseason, and I think it's Patrick Williams. I just think he's been a little bit of a disappointment right now, man. It's, I know a lot of people in his rookie year was like, oh, he might take the Kawhi step approach, but it's not looking like that whatsoever. He plays a little, skittish sometimes. Like he's a little sloppy, that word, and it's tough to see, with Patrick.
He just doesn't look comfortable, and it's his 4th season. I don't know if it's gonna progress that much further, especially his 5th season. So I'm not too confident in his playing style just yet. I think he is definitely going to be a good trade target, but with the money we gave him, I don't see him being a good fit long term. The other one, speaking on the same idea as progression in players, I'd say Dalen Terry is another disappointment of mine. I think a player that you drafted number 14 overall in the draft, he is, he should be a little bit stronger. He should be a little bit more of a player type, but it seems like Buzelis and Julian Phillips all fit the same play style as Dalen Terry. Only difference is that Dalen Terry cannot shoot, he cannot drive, and he cannot play good defense. So he is pretty much just a 5th man who is playing like a 6-man minute. So I don't love the progression of his.
Think about some with these two players, man. Dalen Terry and Patrick Williams. These are players that only are in college for 1 year. In college for 1 year, that's not enough, especially in basketball. Obviously people are like, Cooper Flagg, number 1 overall. Right. Dude, it's his 1st year in college. What if basic fundamentals of defense is a big thing that you develop a few years into college. You're learning how to, box up and stuff like that. But, Dalen Terry and Patrick Williams only having that 1 year experience, if they would have played for a few more years, could have developed a little bit more. So that's, a little bit
very true. Yeah. Very true.
And then, Buzelis right now, he's been playing great with the minutes he's been getting, but he's only been getting 12 minutes per game, man. I think he needs to get some more, let him learn from his mistakes. If he has a turnover or whatever, let's let him get on the floor a little bit more. That's what I
Yeah,
think.
let's give him as many minutes as you can.
Yeah.
It's not that he's taking away from Patrick Williams, but he deserves those minutes, and he's,
I
again,
do.
the future of the team more than anybody else on this roster. I don't see anybody else owning the Bulls name in the next 2 years more than Buzelis. Um, But carrying on from that, I do think he deserves more minutes. But my other biggest disappointment is Billy Donovan in his defensive woes, right? Billy Donovan has never been a defensive coach, at least since Florida when he won 2 championships in a row.
That's right.
There hasn't been much from Billy Donovan since. I mean, especially his time in OKC or his time in Chicago. He's never had a great defense, and this year is showing it more than ever, right? DeMar DeRozan gone, Alex Caruso gone. Those are, one player was good at defense, one player was not. But we have either way become much worse with both players leaving. So there definitely has to be some adjustments there for the Chicago Bulls and just their defense, because since Tom Thibodeau, we have seen no defensive expertise. We've had no defensive-minded players, only Alex Caruso, and that has to change, because the NBA is evolving to becoming a offensive-minded sport, but it's the defensive teams with the good offenses that really run the league. So you can't just be one-sided. You got to be two-sided. So that's an adjustment that's got to happen.
I see in the chat right here we have from, this is my grandpa. Hey, grandpa, what's up?
How's it going?
He said, too many missed shots near the end of the game. Pick and choose better. I agree.
I so agree, Don. That's true.
There's a huge, I see what sometimes at the end of the game, there's one player in particular that does take some bad shots. It would be, Zach LaVine, he's getting double teamed, but he can make those shots. But it seems like toward the end of the game, sometimes those are the times that he does not make that shot. So, thanks, Grandpa. Appreciate the
that's a really good thought, though.
Yeah,
the end of the game is without DeMar DeRozan, right? We were the best fourth quarter efficiency. Without DeMar DeRozan, those fourth quarters are pretty rough. Rough, man.
Now, steer away from disappointments. Let's end off the Bulls talk with some pros right now. One of the pros that I see right now, man, obviously we talked about him, as like one of the season highlights. Lonzo looks very close to healthy. His minutes are going up. He's almost at, I think, 20 minutes now or something like that. So good for Lonzo. I know his goal was to be at like 22 or some, feels like he can play a little bit more. That is great for Lonzo being at full health. We did not expect that whatsoever. Obviously, I didn't expect that. I thought his career would end in a Bulls jersey. Unfortunately, just the way his knee injuries ended up. But Lonzo looking good. That's great. Do you want to take the last two, man?
Of course. So the next one after that is Zach LaVine is officially in the prime of his career. So
it's crazy to think about, man.
The reason why that's a pro is because the contract that we gave him looks sweet now. Only if the Bulls would build a contending roster around him, right? The $205 million that he was owed for 5 seasons now looks really easy. Looks like a really cheap deal, and especially in his prime right now. And the most logical way to understand of him being in his prime is his scoring habits, but also he is second in the NBA in 3-point percentage at 45.5%. 3-point shooting is what runs the league right now. If you want to be the best scoring offense, you need to have the best 3-point shooters in the league. Indeed. And he is playing better than your Steph Currys, your Klay Thompsons, your Jason Tatum's, all these top players in the league who are really good at shooting the 3-ball. He is currently second, and I believe first is Norman Powell. Yeah, first is Norman Powell at the Clippers.
He's rated to be an all-star this year, Norman.
Yeah, Powell. I think he might be an all-star, maybe most improved, but that's just a really important thing for the Bulls right now because, again, either trade piece or future, Zach LaVine is playing in his prime, so exactly the bets that we made at him in the Jimmy Butler deal are officially paying off. Zach LaVine is that guy. And the last one here, I'm really impressed with Ayo Dosunmu. He got his deal extension last season, so he's going to be a Bull for another 2 seasons. He is playing out of his mind right now defensively.
And he just came back yesterday for the first time, and I believe he hurt his hamstring or his calf, if I forgot.
So he didn't play for a minute. He played, I think, 20 minutes yesterday. But currently he is number 1 on the team on turnover to assist ratios. It is 3.8. Which is insane, which is really, really good. Yeah. That's a player that you stash on your bench that's going to bring you late game success. And he is definitely someone that I've tuned into this season because he is aspiring great as a player. He is taking over those defensive minutes that Josh Giddey cannot finish. So it's really important for him to be a great ball handler and understand how his turnovers can affect the late game. But he is playing out of his mind. I'm really impressed with Ayo. Another Chicago kid.
Yeah, I agree. So let's steer away from the Bulls talk. We did about a half hour of the Bulls for you, and let's go right into our next segment, which is going to be our Blackhawks chat for you guys. We're going to be talking about
I'm doing the horn.
I got to figure out how to do that would be I'll figure it out one day.
Yeah, we'll get that
one day eventually. But Blackhawks right now, let's discuss them.
Oof.
They're a little bit on a rough ride right now, unfortunately. The Blackhawks currently are 14-28-2. They are dead last in the league. Seems like this happened last year. They were dead last in the league. We got the second overall pick because of that last year. Unfortunately, we did not claim the first. That was the San Jose Sharks who got Celebrini because of that. But yeah, they are dead last in the league right now, 14-28-2. Goals per game right now. How do they rank? They rank 30th out of 32. So not good right now for the Blackhawks. I know for a while they were kind of like the third period team. They were scoring a lot of goals in the third period, making little comebacks. But if they can do that in the first and the second too, they'll obviously be performing a lot better. Now, goaltending stats, they swap their goaltenders out a lot. You know, they have Arvin Soderblom. They have Peter Mrazek, who's been in goal. He was dealing with an injury for a few weeks as well. He's been out, but he just came back. They are currently ranked at 30th, so not doing too well in that department. And now the power play percentage right now for the Blackhawks, looking mediocre right now. They're 12th.
Yeah.
12th. They were actually, I believe for a while, they were first in penalty kill. Did you know a power play penalty kill?
Okay.
So yeah, they were performing pretty well, but obviously on the defensive end, but on the offensive end, they were kind of in the middle of the pack. So 12th in power play percentage, not bad right now for the Blackhawks. Obviously, a lot of these teams, they have had leads on certain teams that have been playing pretty well. And then, they've lost those leads in the second period. And then that goal differential got to 2 goals with the other team gain on top of them. So, yeah. So I know, obviously, I know you follow hockey a little bit, Dan, but what do you kind of think about the Blackhawks right now?
I think I'm a little bit disappointed at the, at the hype from 2 seasons ago. I was at my first game of the season.
That's right.
I believe that was a week ago. There was the Blackhawks hosting the Calgary Flames. We did lose that game 5-2. It wasn't even a close one. It was 1-1 after 5 minutes in the first period. But I think the one thing that I've noticed about this team is that we are still so young and we are not quick, right? So we still have very, really young legs and we're making really bad plays. We're not getting to the puck first and we're not making good passes. So this is just a part of being a young team, a young roster trying to build through it. Obviously, coaching has a lot of the situational, positions that need to get a little bit better.
In the middle of the season. They did.
So it's a very Bears move. Let's comparatively talk about Caleb being Bedard in that situation of he needs to a little bit more support around him when it comes to veteran leadership and stuff like that. But Blackhawks don't look like they're in a good position. But at the end of the day, having a young team is how you build for the future. So it can only go up from here. And you talked about the goalie, or no, not yet. Sorry, we're talking about the team season leaders in the next part here. But Tyler, how do you feel about the Hawks?
You know what? Obviously, looking into the offseason, coming into this season, I thought they could potentially be like, low end, middle of the road team. I'm not saying they're going to be like, first place, but obviously a little bit disappointed in that category. There were some key injuries at the beginning of the season that kind of, got some of the players out. Seth Jones been out for a while, but he's been performing a little bit poorly. When we get to the disappointments category, that'll kind of be one of my disappointments this year is Seth Jones. Unfortunately, he seems like he's kind of, dragging this team down a little bit just because he's not the fastest guy on the ice. And it seems like he's really slowing this team down a bit. But unfortunately, I'm a little disappointed with the Blackhawks right now. But it is, I hate to say it is what it is, but the Blackhawks didn't pick up a lot of key pieces. They picked up, Tyler Bertuzzi in the offseason from the Detroit Red Wings, who's been a great addition to this Hawks team. Who knows how this team would be without Tyler Bertuzzi right now? That's all I got to say. He had some key defensive plays, one of the leader in goals right now for the Blackhawks. And we'll talk about that with season leaders coming up. But yeah, unfortunately, a little bit disappointing right now. Obviously, they did fire their head coach. That's going to be, when we talk about disappointments, that'll be another thing. They brought the Rockford Ice Hogs head coach up to be their interim head coach. I forgot, can't think of it. Sorensen, Andres Sorensen. That's his name. They brought him up. He got his first win within a few games of being the head coach. So good for him.
Good for him, yeah.
But it looks like he's performing a little better than Luke Richardson did. But it's still a rough ride right now for the Blackhawks. So now let's steer away from that and let's go into the season leaders right now for the Blackhawks. Obviously, we haven't talked anything about Blackhawks for you guys so far this season. Points right now, the leader, no shocker whatsoever, and we're glad that he is the leader in points right now. Is Connor Bedard with 39. Good for Connor, getting his passes off. His assists, and his goals are finally getting up as well. He was in a goals drought for, I believe, 9 games, and he, got out of that a few weeks ago. So good for him. You want to take over the goals, man?
Of course. So goals is the person we mentioned earlier, Tyler Bertuzzi, with 14 goals in the season. He is obviously the team leading, and he is playing really well next to Bedard because Bedard is right next to him in the assist leading category. Connor Bedard has 27 assists. That looks pretty good comparative to his 39 points. So he's definitely a guy that's going to be playing the first key in the position, but he's never going to be taking many shots. Tyler Bertuzzi is playing, pretty well and is in the opposite position from Connor. So that's a good matchup that we have going as first. Now, the offense, again, like I mentioned before, is really young, and they're not getting a lot of shots off, but they still have, young legs that can be good and bad, and it just takes time to decide on whether this is going to be worth it for the future or not. But at least for the time being, they are playing well together and they're meshing well together. But this goalie situation, which for me, being at the game I was at, it was a very upsetting part. And the way
who did you see in goal?
Peter Mrazek.
Was it Mrazek?
Yeah, it was Mrazek. He wasn't playing too well. So I think the stats from before the game when I went, because again, I was trying to get introduced to the Blackhawks roster before taking all season to talk about Bears. I was really hyped for his position and the way that he was playing, but he let up 5 goals, very easy goals, very quick goals, and you do you know how many times the puck would be sitting behind him and he wouldn't know it was there, which is again a goalie mistake, but it's something that I'd like to see more often. In my history of watching Blackhawks, I haven't seen that often in one game. So the goalie, I mean, obviously there's a lot of stats for different goalies here, but I'm going to cover his stats. He's allowing 3.35 goals per game.
Yeah.
Which is 3 goals that the offense has to score, which the offense is not scoring 3.35 goals per game. So that gives you an idea into the record. He does have an 89% save percentage, but I think comparative to other goalies in the league, that is quite on the lower side. So he has a lot of work to do, and I was not impressed with his play when I saw him.
Yeah, it was a rough game he went to, man, unfortunately. Getting up 5 goals, and that was against the Calgary Flames, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it was a rough game, unfortunately, that the Blackhawks put up on their home ice, but yeah, so they've been swapping in and out of goalies, trying to figure out what can work for them. Obviously, what's called Peter Mrazek was hurt for a little bit. They put Soderblom in. He did okay certain games, other games not. But yeah, unfortunately, right now for the Hawks, it's kind of being dead last. It's kind of rough. But steering away from that, let's talk about biggest pros, biggest cons with the Blackhawks. There's not like too many, obviously, right now, but the biggest pros with the Blackhawks I noticed is the development of the younger players has been getting. I'm not saying it's great, but it's good. I can say it's a pro. Bedard getting his 1,000th career point already. That great for Connor Bedard, and then also what's it called? Brought him up from the Rockford Ice Hogs, Frankie Nazar. He got his first goal last game, so he's been getting more ice time, and he's been trying to take advantage. Being a younger player coming up to the NHL, it's a bit of a learning experience, but he's learning it pretty well. So he's been doing pretty well. And for the cons, man, for the disappointments, I talked about this a little bit earlier.
Yeah, it's a big one.
I think obviously besides the disappointments firing their head coach in the middle of the season, that's rough for the players, coaching staff, everybody that works with the team. That's got to be a disappointment right now. And obviously, goalie, trying to figure out which goalie works. That's got to be another disappointment, figuring out who works what game. Yeah. Seth Jones has been kind of a disappointment right now, man. He seems like he's bringing this team down. It seems like he's not, basically he was injured for a while, and it seems like right when he came back, this team isn't scoring enough goals. The defense has been a little bit more off. I just think Seth Jones has kind of been a disappointment this season.
I agree. I think the coaching thing is huge for me because obviously going through the whole season as a Bears fan, you understand how coaching can change. And I love the development of the players. I think this is very much of a player self-development rather than a coaching player development. I'd love to see a little bit more presence in the coaching market and see what we can kind of find there. But I agree with you. I think a big pro was the development. I think Connor Bedard showing off to become the best player in Chicago at the moment most likely is true. So that is very, very impressive on his front. So even though the record doesn't share, we are going to share with you each week what we kind of think of the roster and the way it looks and the way it's constructed. Hopefully there's a couple more changes to come in the future here. Yeah. What are some highlights of the season though? What are some highlights you got?
It's hard to pick out some highlights right now. Just
I know you have one. I
do have one highlight, because obviously it was really cool for the experience that I got to enjoy at Wrigley. Was that the Blackhawks did host one of the Winter Classic games this year, one of the stadium games at Wrigley Field, which was super fun. Blackhawks against Blues. Unfortunately, they did not perform well. I think the final score of the game was like 5-2 or 6-2, right around. I think it was 6-2 if I recall correctly. Obviously, they lost that game against the Blues. The Blues are in a playoff picture right now, trying to make that next step to make sure they solidify being in the playoffs. They were playing for a lot, and the Blackhawks on their quote unquote home ice, on Wrigley did not perform very well. But for me, that was a season highlight because I got to work that. I got to be there. It was super cool. It was a sold out crowd. It was I think 41,000 people at Wrigley to see that. It was really, really cool. A lot of people showing out for their team. I know obviously on Twitter, if you guys read that as well, it was one of the lowest watched Winter Classics ever in history. I heard they did not promote the game well. I heard it was not promoted well. There wasn't a lot of commercials about it. I heard a lot of people saying, wow, that was today. I had no idea. Yeah, because apparently they did not promote the game really well. But that has to be a season highlight for me. Wrigley Field hosting Blackhawks Blues. That has to be that. And Dan, you want to talk about the other season highlight?
Of course. So seeing how expensive the tickets were for the Winter Classic, I would say the best way to have watched the game is to do what Tyler did, and that's work for Wrigley. So it's
get a job of security or something.
Get a job of security because Tyler was on the clock getting money to himself while he was watching the game. So very lucky experience for that. Really cool, I was really happy for him. We're looking at the photos of him, and he came back really quickly to come celebrate New Year's Eve with us. That was a really fun day for him, and I love talking to him and getting that experience with him because even though the Blackhawks didn't get the outing that we wanted, it's still one of those once in a lifetime experiences that you really won't get a second time, no matter how hard you try. So I'm really thankful that Tyler got that experience so he could help us share in that experience. So
I was very really grateful and fortunate to be there. It was really cool. I did that 3 rehearsal days. There was a lot of rehearsal. I didn't seeing a big production like TNT, seeing what goes into these, with the pyro, with the fireworks and, the color guard and all this other stuff. It was super cool because I was a stage manager for the event. I got to help out. It was super cool seeing everything that goes into it. It was like 90 different things throughout the whole entire game that, different segments and stuff. Super cool. I was, very grateful to be there, and super cool highlight for the game or for the year.
Really cool. You took a lot of great photos there. So going on to our other season highlight of the year, I believe this happened in the game where I was at the Calgary Flames when Bedard got his assist. He got his 100th career point.
I said 100th career point.
100th career, 1,000th would be.
I said 1,000 earlier. I was like, wow, like
it'd be best rookie of all time, right? Best third year, second or third year player. But 100th career point. I think my favorite part of it was when they interviewed him after the game. They asked him how excited he was, and he wasn't excited at all. Because they lost the game. So I think Bedard, I like his energy because he is a winner. He is someone that has won multiple, Olympic gold medals and championships for the Canada team, the U18 team. So he is used to winning. I think he also has that same mentality that Caleb Williams might have, that he came from such winning and diverse backgrounds to coming to Chicago and having to face adversity on the lowest level possible, which is usually the worst team in the league. It's nice to see him, keep rising and keep striving. So I do also like that he isn't too keen on the idea of breaking records or making the milestones. He wants to win games. So do I.
I agree, man. So, obviously there's not too much to talk about the Hawks with them being in dead last place right now. But, when we get to the, more information with the Hawks for you guys, we'll definitely bring you guys to there. Every week we're going to try to get you guys more info of what happened the last few games. Obviously, we weren't going to go through 25 games or 30 games they are now. That's a bit of excessive, but we just obviously want to give you guys the highlights and talk about, everybody's stats. Starting next week, we'll start to, talk about individual games, see what happened in individual games and stuff like that, since we're now all caught up. So
exactly. Yeah.
It's gonna be so now steering away from the Blackhawks, we could talk about, them being in dead last all day, but we could talk about a little bit of what we've been discussing, the last few weeks, which has been very important for the Bears. And that's kind of talking about, the new head coach search for the Bears. Who are the Bears going to, hire as their head coach? Well, basically, let's talk about this real quick. Who have the Bears met with so far? Basically, their first interview. There have been a lot of coaches the Bears have met with. They've currently met with so far Thomas Brown, who is the Bears interim head coach. They met with him Monday, January 13th. So they met with him 3 days ago. They met with Pete Carroll, former Seahawks head coach. That was last Thursday they met with him. Aaron Glenn, that was last Saturday over, obviously, since he's with the Lions. That was a virtual interview with him, Lions defensive coordinator. A few other people they've met with so far: Ben Johnson, big name that we've heard of,
Yep.
who the Bears can, potentially sign. Lions offensive coordinator, that was last Saturday. That was the same day as Aaron Glenn. That was also a virtual interview as well. This not, now talking about names that may not sound too appealing to you, but maybe the one after I'm about to say, Mike Kafka, who's the Giants offensive coordinator. That was last Thursday they met with him. Now, this was a big name that we didn't get to discuss because we didn't know what the Cowboys were going to do.
Mm-hmm.
Cowboys actually declined our first or the Bears' first wishes to interview this person. We said, hey, we want to interview Mike McCarthy. And the Cowboys said, no, sorry, he's not getting any interviews. But something happened where they basically said, we don't know if we want to extend Mike McCarthy for the long run. And guess what? They did not come to a deal on Monday this week. And so now basically Mike McCarthy is free to interview wherever he wants. The Bears were one of the teams that requested to interview for him, and they interviewed with him yesterday. So Mike McCarthy, former Cowboys head coach, interviewed yesterday with they apparently flew him out on a private jet out here. That's why I've heard on Twitter, flew him out to, get the interview done as soon as possible. Well, after I kind of go over the list, we'll kind of, dive into what we're thinking of. But you want to go over the last few people, man?
Of course, most definitely. So there's a few names here that are more so not interesting, but I think the Bears did it just to get an idea of where are these people at, these coaches at, where their heads at, and what kind of advice they could actually give the Bears and their head coach there. So a lot of these players I don't think are going to get second interviews, but let's go through them anyway. We have Drew Petzing, the Cardinals offensive coordinator. They met on Thursday. So you could tell Thursday was a pretty busy day for the Bears.
It was, yeah.
And then Ron Rivera, former Panthers and Commanders head coach, also former Bear. Also, they met him on Sunday on the 12th. He's an interesting name to look out for just because he has experience with a lot of rookie quarterbacks. And he also, me being a former Bear, he works really well in those conditions in playing the NFC. So he's an interesting name. David Shaw, Broncos senior personal executive. They met him on Tuesday. I don't think he's going to dive that deep. This seems like more of a player that is, hey, how did you build your team and how did you assess your team? And can you give us any advice? That's kind of the way I look at that. Arthur Smith, get him out. Get him out. Give him a bus pass out of his way to Chicago. How about that? How about not even fly him out? Give him a bus pass. See if he shows up. Steelers offensive coordinator. They met with him on Wednesday. I'm hoping that went poorly because I don't want Arthur Smith. I don't want Arthur Smith at all.
Mike Vrabel pass on the yellow line.
Yes, give him a pass on the yellow line. See if he knows his way around. Mike Vrabel, former Titans coach, he got hired actually by the Patriots, but he did his interview on Wednesday. I'm wondering if that interview didn't go so well because he did get hired a few days after that quite quickly. I mean, I think the same day of his interview, I think he had a report as well of him interested in Patriots.
I just think the Titans were very eager to hire somebody, and Mike Vrabel being one of the guys.
Or the Patriots.
Patriots. I read former Titans head coach. Yeah, I think the Patriots are really eager to hire somebody very quick who has head coaching experience. I didn't think they wanted to take a risk like Ben Johnson, kind of like what they did last season with Jared Mayo. I forgot what team he was with before, but they didn't want to take another risk like they did last season. So I feel like the Patriots are like, let's be the first team to pick somebody up. Let's solidify a former head coach so to have our best odds to potentially, have a winning season. So they did do that with Mike.
And he's a former Patriot. He's won Super Bowls with the Patriots, so he is familiar to that roster. I don't think he had a huge chance in Chicago. I do think he fit his mark there in the Patriots. So that's a good hiring by them. I think if there was the first coach to go, it would have been Vrabel. Going on to the next one here of players that did have their interview already. Anthony Reaver is the last one on the list. He is the Dolphins defensive coordinator. He has an interview on Thursday.
Not
so interested. Yeah, I'm not so interested. Yeah. No, it didn't feel too appetizing. So
I see Peter did say that in the chat. David Shaw was the head coach of Stanford when Andrew Luck was there, right? Unfortunately, I don't know too much about college, man. You would probably know more than me. That would
not be my mark either.
But head coach of a college team, I know obviously, college football.
If we're talking Andrew Luck, that must be almost 10 years ago now.
Probably, yeah. So that I unfortunately don't know that one. You might have to look that up, man. I can actually look that up too. But kind of steering away from coaches we've already interviewed. And let's go to This is a shorter list. Coaches that we have scheduled interviews for. Now, one of these coaches just got eliminated last weekend. This would be Brian Flores, Vikings defensive coordinator. So he is free to now meet with teams, not virtually. He can go in person. We're scheduled to meet him this Saturday. Now, this is another name that I've been seeing flown around more on Twitter. A lot of teams are potentially like him to be a head coach. Todd Monken, Ravers offensive coordinator. He's scheduled to meet with the Bears on Friday, January 17th. So in 2 days from now, I'm sorry, tomorrow. I'm thinking today is Wednesday. He's scheduled to meet there on Friday. And so those are the two ones we have scheduled now. Now, requested interviews where we have not heard back from the teams. One requested interview would be Joe Brady. He's the Bills offensive coordinator. I know Josh Allen was saying, don't interview with him. He's a bad coach. He just basically, like,
wants to keep Joe Brady, right?
Wants to keep Joe Brady. Matt Campbell. This was an interesting one. Ohio State head coach, or sorry, Ohio State. Oh my God, Iowa State head coach. Ohio State's what's his name? I can't think of his name off the top of my head.
Don't want him either. Ohio State coach. I don't want him either. I heard
some that if he doesn't win the national championship now, that he's going to be fired in especially Notre Dame. Yeah. But now a few more names. Now this is another one that we keep our eyes on. Marcus Freeman, Notre Dame head coach. He's in the national championship as well, coming up next Monday. Two more names that we requested for: Cliff Kingsbury, Commanders offensive coordinator, and now this is a new one that popped up yesterday. Adam Stenovich, Packers offensive coordinator. No, we've tried that once.
Don't want him. I don't think. The Packers didn't look too promising anyway on offense this season. I mean, they've held their own, but there's been a lot of close games. So I don't know if I love the idea. Obviously, Cliff has that history with Caleb. So if we're talking anybody that can unlock Caleb to the NFL ability, it most likely will be Cliff at the best potential. But any of these names, tickle you the most, Tyler, out of the scheduled interviews and requested interviews?
Ooh, that's a good question, man. One name that really does seem intriguing to me, obviously talking about I like Brian Flores. I don't like him more than some other coaches that we've already interviewed, but Brian Flores is a name that kind of sparks interest to me. Obviously, there was that kind of controversy with him and Tua. Basically, him and Tua not getting along on the team. That's why he potentially left the team, because Tua did sign that extension. But Todd Monken's another name that kind of pops up to me. I really like him potentially being I don't want him to be the head coach, but I would like to see him.
I can see it happen. Yeah, I love Brian Flores. I was so right with you. I agree with you there. Like, he is definitely a team player. He's definitely the guy that they're looking for to fill that position.
Yeah.
Now, him being defensive coordinator was a really good job, but him dealing with both sides of the ball is kind of what worries me. Because again, the biggest thing here is Caleb. Who can unlock Caleb? Yeah. And Brian Flores and his track record hasn't shown me so much that he's unlocking quarterbacks on a yearly basis.
Yeah, I like.
I like Todd Monken. Again, it's easy to look good when Lamar's your quarterback.
And you have Derrick Henry as your running back.
Henry.
I heard
he has neither of those.
I saw somebody tweet that he was a high school coach and their team went 4-11 that year or something like that with Todd Monken as their head coach. I think it was Illinois or something like that. But I do see a few things in the chat here. We got Peter saying Mayo wasn't a coach elsewhere. He was the Patriots linebacker coach. I forgot about that. See, I don't remember a lot of So
internal hire.
Obviously, that was an internal hire for them. Also, David Shaw coached the Stanford Cardinals from 2011 to 2022. So that was a decent while. He did coach that, and he did stop up the Ohio State head coach is Ryan Day. That sometimes
I almost forgot. Yeah, Ryan Day.
Easy name to remember, but I forgot. But
all right. Now, so as we've been saying earlier, right? Yeah. I mean, who is the person that's going to unlock Caleb? But what does Caleb think? What does Caleb think is the best for Caleb? Tyler, what do you have written down here, huh?
So Caleb, if you guys didn't hear about this on Twitter or anything like that, he did have a interview on the St. Brown podcast with Amon-Ra St. Brown and his brother Equanimeous St. Brown. They both had an interview with Caleb. It was about an hour long that he had his whole entire. They were asking him all these questions. What are you looking for in a new head coach? And Caleb Williams did say, selfishly, I want an offensive-minded guy. I want a guy who knows how to manage the clock, knows how to call timeouts, knows how to run plays in the right time where these plays. I did not watch the whole entire interview. I'm actually want to watch that potentially tomorrow or at some point. It's about an hour long. I will get to it, but. Caleb Williams selfishly wants an offensive-minded guy, and I don't blame him, man, after what happened this year at Eberflus being a defensive-minded head coach. So, so what I've been seeing, these two names right now that are flowing around that the Bears are going to have for their head coach hire. And these are the two names that if they can get one of these names right, then the Bears would be in good business. Number one, obviously a name that we kind of know and we've been seeing around, Ben Johnson. Amon-Ra St. Brown yesterday said, you don't want him. You guys don't want him. But because he won't, it's the same thing as Joe Brady with, Josh Allen. They want to keep him on their team. So clearly we could see how Amon-Ra like, he's Ben Johnson is very valued with that team. So that, yeah, after seeing that, I'm like, he might be a coach that the Bears could potentially get. Another team name that's floated around that we kind of discussed a little bit earlier, Mike McCarthy. Mike McCarthy obviously not signing that extension with the Cowboys. I thought Jerry Jones was going to get a little greedy and sign an extension with him just because he likes keeping these internal coaches within the team. Mike McCarthy is another name to watch out for. He's been a head coach for 12 years now or something like that. He has been head coach for a while. He has head coaching experience. He has gotten some playoff, can't think of the name now. He's playoff appearances. That's what it is. Playoff appearances with the teams. Top 10 in O-line and D-line with some of these teams, especially the Cowboys. But Ben Johnson, Mike McCarthy, those are the two names that are at the top. But the most favorited head coach right now, according to one of the sports books, is Ben Johnson at -250 right now. He's the most favorited to come.
Which I'm happy with, right? We talked about this. We can't, keep beating it around, but I think Ben Johnson is the guy that the Bears want. I like Mike McCarthy. I do have to admit, I like Mike McCarthy because of his ability to, promote the quarterback being quarterback centric. But I saw this one particular stat that was really funny. They put Mike McCarthy's career coaching stats up against Mike Tomlin's career coaching stats.
Okay.
Mike McCarthy was leading him in all of those categories: playoff wins, playoff defenses, like every single category you could think of. Mike McCarthy had a points to 10 points higher. So that to me is important because I was about to throw anything at Mike Tomlin. Give me anything. Take whatever you want. I'll give you Cole Kmet. Take Cole Kmet, dude. Whatever. Like, it's important for me to see that because that to me shows like, hey, even though the Cowboys haven't been too relevant, this is a guy that has coached in the NFC, right? Former Packer coach, and he understands how that NFC matchups could go. So that's important to me. And Ben Johnson knows the same way. And that, to me, I think is very important. So those two coaches definitely number one on my list. Yeah.
I agree too, man. We have a few comments in the chat. I think they're from Peter. These are some great ones. Here we go. I'd love to see if we could lateral Kingsbury from the Commanders to our offensive coordinator to pair with Ben Johnson. Kingsbury is not a good head coach, as evident with the Cardinals, and I agree with you, but I don't think Cliff will lead Jaden. I did see that report before that last game with the Commanders and the Buccaneers that basically said that Cliff is comfortable in Washington and he will stay. But it could, it'd be crazy if he did leave Washington to repair with, Caleb on the Bears. I don't know if he wants to be. I think he kind of wants to stay in the offensive coordinator role. It seems like he would. That would be.
And it's definitely interesting to kind of see there. I do think Cliff stays. I think I'd rather have him not be the coach. I agree with Peter here. Him with Kyler Murray was sad, bro. Was sad. Like that team did not get unlocked. That team was not that potent. And I'm really worried that he would turn Caleb into a very similar production quarterback as Kyler, which is very dependent on run game, right? Cardinals Kyler plays strictly well when the run game's doing well. If it's doing bad, then he's throwing interceptions, getting 150 yards. That's it. So I'm not huge on Cliff. I do think the connection's there, but after seeing what he did with Jaden, I think I'd rather him just stay in Washington. I think he's got some good there.
I would like him to be our offensive coordinator, though. If he would take that jump to Chicago, but I think he likes what Jaden's doing in Washington. But I love this comment. And then here's another one. I love this comment. I love how Caleb mentions everything that he wants in a head coach to do, everything that Eberflus basically failed to do, and he's taking shots. And I don't blame him, man.
That's so fair. Eberflus did not do the right job, and we can continue blaming him for that, right? He didn't do the job he was supposed to. So I agree with you. And what about Shane Waldron? Let's throw Shane Waldron under the bus. He is someone that was given the keys to the city. Here's the number one quarterback. What did he do with it? Jack. He did nothing.
He did absolutely nothing.
So that was a very poor performance from coaching this year. And I can already tell you that whoever's coming in this time is gonna be a lot better for Caleb here.
Yeah. So keep your eyes peeled. It looks like, obviously a lot of these head coaching, job, we'll figure out. I saw the Raiders are potentially trying to boost to get Ben Johnson right now. We'll see what happens with the Bears and their head coaching search. Looks like, it's potentially going to either be McCarthy or Ben Johnson. We'll see how eager Tom Brady and his Raiders team that he's a part owner of want to get Ben Johnson, but he can't really sign anything until that team is eliminated from the playoffs. So we'll see what happens this weekend with the Lions taking on the Commanders. That's what it is. Yeah, I couldn't think off time. And then Eagles are taking on the Oh my God, Rams. That's what it is. That's the
Oh, that's
NFC.
gonna be a good matchup.
Yeah. It's gonna be great matchups this week. I'm so excited about that. But yeah, let's steer away from the head coaching search since obviously the Bears haven't signed anything yet, and let's kind of go into just real quick. We're gonna kind of touch on it just because it is super early. About a little bit about the 2025 NFL draft. I know Peter's super excited about the 2025 NFL draft.
Mhm.
He loves draft day. He's been texting me all about this, the draft with the Bears and what they're going to do at number 10. So obviously the Bears have the number 10th overall pick. With the Bears beating the Packers, we slipped from 7 to 10. So obviously there's a few teams in front of us, and it all depends on what those teams are going to do in front of us, who they draft. Who do we think the Bears are going to target at number 10? And there's some big names here. Obviously, kind of talking about what position they go. Are they going to go defensive end? Are they going to go, an edge rusher? Are they going to go offensive lineman? Or do they kind of swing for the fences and go for a next generational running back?
Yeah.
Now, Dan, I don't know if you've kind of seen any of the players kind of flowing around right now. Who do you kind of think the Bears, we don't have to say like specific if you don't want to, but who do you think the Bears kind of try to target at number 10?
For me, I'm all about the trenches, right? So that comes down to two positions. But if you're telling me about a school that produces year after year huge talents on offense, I'm going with Will Campbell. I think that is the best position. Now, there's been a huge suggestion to the idea that his position is already filled by Darnell Wright or Tevin Jenkins. So that depends a lot on how the Bears are going to go with their restricted free agents. I do think he'll fit perfectly well on the weak side, on the blind side of Caleb. I love his energy. I love his tempo. I think he is a guy that's going to bring energy to the trenches here. And that is, for me, my pick at number 10. I do think he slides there. I do think this draft is filled with a lot of other positions. I don't think O-line is going to be so mandatory.
That's a great pick, man. That was going to be my pick. Will Campbell has been my number one pick for the Bears for weeks now. If he could slip to the Bears at number 10, depends on what those teams before him want. What are the Saints eager to get an offensive lineman after their offensive line being torched, in the offseason? Or do the Bears take a swing at Ashton Jeanty at number 10? I know a lot of Chicago fans will riot after what happened with their offensive line in the regular season. Obviously Caleb giving up the most sacks in the whole entire season, but Ashton Jeanty could be that that handcuff running back option with Swift on the side. Obviously a lot of people are like trade Swift, but I would love to see a pairing of Ashton Jeanty and,
that could go strong. That could go strong.
Swift.
Yeah.
But I do think offensive line is the key, for the Bears right now. Offensive line has to be the key focus right now for the Bears, or defensive end. Strengthen up that defensive end with an edge rusher, or obviously on that line. Here's some big names that I've seen in mock drafts: Ashton Jeanty from Boise State, the running back; Will Campbell, the offensive lineman from, I believe, Michigan, if I recall correctly; Abdul Carter, the edge rusher from Penn State. But I saw a mock draft today that said that he'd go number 10 to the Bears. He ain't slipping out past 5.
I don't think so. Yeah,
I think the Browns either take him at number 2 and pull the trigger on him, or they stays within the number 5. A few more names: Kelvin Banks Jr., another offensive tackle from, I can't think of the school right now off the top of my head. Is it Tennessee? I don't want to recall correctly. But then there's James Pierce Jr. He is an edge rusher, I believe Texas A&M. So those are some big names I've been seeing with the Bears. Bears number 10. Obviously, look at the different positions. This is kind of like last year. Are we going to go last year?
Exactly.
Are we going to go wide receiver? Are we going to go offensive lineman? Are we going to go edge rusher? But these are kind of the names I've been seeing flowing around at number 10.
It's the same as last year or the year before that even. I think we knew we were going offensive line at number 10. I remember there was a lot of Jalen Carter talk, and then the year before that, Roma Dunze with other wide receivers and other offensive linemen, other running backs. I was really happy with the pick of Rome last year, so I think there needs to be another pick for offense to adjust the offense and Caleb getting hit. So there's gonna be a lot of players on the board there.
I gotta say, there's just a lot of holes to fill. It's like, do we fill the edge rusher hole? I looked at free agents with edge rushers right now. Seems like a lot of these edge rushers are older. And we'll talk about, the next segment, which will be a little bit of a shorter segment, off-season targets, like who are some players that we can potentially sign. Kelvin Banks Jr. is from Texas Longhorns. Thanks, Peter. Texas. See, he knows everything. That's what it is, Texas. One of the orange teams. See, I thought it was Tennessee. It's Texas. See, I get some of the orange teams mixed up, but appreciate it, man. But yeah, so we'll talk about, there's one player that I think the Bears could potentially target. That's an edge rusher that will be a free agent. But edge rusher, offensive.
Let's go over now. Why not?
Yeah, let's go right into it.
So, who is your? So I have one wild one and I have one realistic one, and you can add a wild one if you wanted. Who is your number one offseason target when it comes to free agency or trade or a player that's already in the league, not draft capital wise? Who are you aiming for?
Okay, so it obviously depends on what happens with the draft for me. If we do not fill this, I have one player written down right now. I didn't dive a little bit too much into it. Unfortunately, I will next week when we talk more about free agents, I'll dive more into it. But if we don't fill that edge rusher role, one of the players that is a little bit younger than everybody else right now that could potentially help, the Bears would be Josh Sweat from the Philadelphia Eagles. And you guys, it would be cool. Sweat and Sweat on the each side. Reason why I say this, he's 27 years old right now. He will be 28 by the time, offseason moves kind of happen. But if you're looking at edge rusher free agents, everybody is 31, 32. They're a little bit older.
Oh,
and we know how Ryan Poles doesn't like signing older players besides Keenan Allen. He was like the one player but he had 8 sacks in 2024. He has one of the best stats out of any edge rusher that I saw for free agents that the Bears could potentially pick up. So he was my main pickup. We can get him for maybe around $10 to $13 million a year if we decide to sign him. But Josh Sweat, I could see Sweat and Sweat on the same team.
The Sweat brothers.
See?
Let's go. I love that pick. I would put that pick above mine for sure. Okay. I think that would help us out because again, you're right. You're right with the age range he's at. That would fit the mold of the roster immediately. And I think for defensive end, Sweat and Sweat would be a tremendous.
And it was one of the better players with more sacks that I saw on the list for free agents. I dove into like the top 8, and I kind of went into the stats and everything like that. Josh Sweat was one of the eye-popping guys for me that I thought the Bears would potentially get. But Dan, who do you got, man?
My biggest would be offensive lineman Joseph Noteboom from the Los Angeles Rams.
Yeah.
He is 29 years old. He is a 5-year player, and he has performed really, really well. He's not anywhere in the first team categories, but he's lining up for those second team categories. For a offensive lineman to be playing with a quarterback like Matthew Stafford, obviously that would mean a lot to Caleb. And also, Matthew Stafford is not a mobile quarterback, so you know that you have to protect him at all costs. I think he's played really well season so far, but unfortunately he did make it to IR and he did miss the playoff game. So he does have some struggle with injury, it being his 5th season, but altogether this year and last year, he put up really good all-pro numbers. So he is the player that I would be targeting for the offensive line. But like I said, I love Joseph Noteboom, but if we're going to go offensive line with the first pick, I would love Josh Sweat. I think that would be a great, tremendous pickup. And you're saying 10 to 13 million. I would even go anywhere up to 14, 15 million per year. So I think he's a really good position player for us. But here's my wild one. I've had this on the document for 2 weeks because I thought we were going to talk about
I'll get a wild one for you because I did not get to do that, unfortunately.
No worries.
I forgot to get a trade potentially, player. But let me hear your wild one, man.
So here's my wild one. Obviously, we all know the Miami Dolphins are a bit of a tricky situation with their wide receiver room and Tyreek Hill specifically. So what do you do with an unhappy Tyreek Hill? You say, hey, we got this quarterback that can throw crazy distances and can always find an open receiver. He's a very similar play style to DJ Moore. So what do you say about getting 2 of the players that are the best after the catch on either side of the ball with Rome Odunze getting that slot work? I think that is an unbelievably hard wide receiver room to beat, and that would be absolutely insane. Obviously, it would have to be through trade, but the deal that he has right now is a very good deal. It's not particularly out of the world. It's like top 10 of all wide receivers. So if we're talking for a guy that would give us 3 to 4 more seasons in a Bears uniform, someone I like the energy of, and someone that isn't happy on his current roster, man, I'm taking Tyreek Hill. But what is he worth in trade? Probably a lot through trade. But that is the one offseason target I have that's like, you never know. And that would be a phenomenal pickup for us to replace Keenan Allen.
I've seen what Tyreek Hill is potentially, if somebody trades for him, what the trade would look like. And it seems like a lot. That's all I just see is I love the swing for the fences trade idea that you have. It just seems like
it's a lot.
Obviously,
it's going to be a lot.
Bulls and the Bears organization probably will not swing for the fence. I think Tyreek Hill is fed up with being on a losing team right now. Obviously, we've had some winning years in the past with the Dolphins, but I just feel like he's fed up with potentially being on a quote unquote losing organization. He would look at the Bears being like, no, that's not a team I want to be traded to. I saw some that he potentially could be traded to Philly. I saw some about that, but it would be so cool if he could be, in a Bears uniform, but I just don't think that. I think he's sick of losing. He wants to get another Super Bowl like he was with the Chiefs.
I agree with you there.
But I do see Peter here saying this is another one. How are we not talking about Trey Smith from Kansas City if he becomes 100%. Available? He's a great guard. I agree. If he becomes available, Bulls give him a blank check. Sign him whatever.
Give him what he wants.
anything on Kansas City right now, their offensive line is looking great. Obviously, at the beginning of the season looked a little rough just because of a few pieces being moved around, but he's looking great. I love this idea. I know you've been texting me about that. Trey Smith would be a great pickup for
Yeah,
the
I agree.
Bears
Trey Smith,
organization.
that's a name to definitely monitor. I would love him to Bears uniform.
Yeah. So we're kind of a little over an hour now. So we're kind of, dive out of that, and we're going to end the podcast with which one of our, obviously we've been talking about Chicago Bears fun facts, the last few weeks, just because of, we've been mainly Bears centric just because of the whole season. Now, since we're incorporating more Hawks and Bulls coming up, since Bears season is now unfortunately over, let's get into just overall Chicago sports fun facts. So Chicago sports fun fact. Dan, you want to start off with a
Yes, of course. We have 2 Bears ones and 1 Bulls one. So go ahead and take a look for which one is your favorite here. So the first one, it's not a fun fact, but it's, again, they don't have to be ultimately good fun facts. They just have to be facts that you could find fun that you didn't know beforehand. So the Bears finished the 2024-25 season with the least amount of yards in the entire league. They had 4,839 yards. That's 130 yards less than the Patriots. That sucks. That's
why I call Chicago sports ugly fact.
Yeah, ugly fact. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, God,
exactly.
That's a sucks fact. Now, here's another fun fact for you guys, steering away from that one. The Chicago Bears once had a live bear mascot named Whizzer. That is so weird.
Yeah, right?
He was part of the team between 1931 and 1935, was eventually retired for safety reasons. Can you imagine a bear getting loose in the middle?
Bear. Yeah, it's Soldier Field, baby.
I just think about
how funny is that?
I just think about when I think about the bear, I think about, was it 4 years ago? There was Texas versus Georgia when they had the live, Longhorn,
yes,
and they had the bulldog go, and the Longhorn almost trampled the bulldog.
Yeah,
and I think it was this season. They're like, no, sorry, we're not bringing the bulldog because we don't. That
no animals.
God. Yeah, that.
And the thing about the Bears did that at a field that was probably not protected much for a bear, but it's maybe we'll bring that back. Maybe we could use that energy. What's the last one here? This is definitely a fun fact. This one I incorporated just because it's so crazy to think about how many points teams are scoring. And this is a Zach LaVine stat, so we're happy for Zach LaVine and how well he's playing. But you want to take it away, Tyler?
Yeah. The Bulls' highest scoring game in franchise history, if you guys didn't know this, was in 2019. So about 5 years ago. And the reason why I'm bringing this up, because it was 168 points with the Zach LaVine era, like Danny said. That's a lot of points, man.
It's a lot of points. They played the Atlanta Hawks. The Atlanta Hawks lost the game. They put up 161. It was one of the highest scoring games between 2 teams in NBA history. But just another look at the idea that this is when we got Zach LaVine from the Jimmy Butler trade. 168 points. Oh my gosh, that's enough for 2 games.
Yeah. And now we have one more fun fact provided by Peter C. It says, Chicago sports fun fact, the White Sox suck.
True that.
I was texting you about this all day yesterday, man. Yeah, it's unfortunate. I was talking about how when 2019, or I'm sorry, not 2019, 2021, when I went to that White Sox playoff game, one of the best games I ever been to. But yeah, the White Sox with Will Venable, they just got to get figured out, man. He hired some good pieces. It's just about picking up a lot, obviously the White Sox right now aren't a team that a lot of players want to go to just because of them being, getting that record for the worst, losing season ever and stuff like that. Unfortunately, those Sox right now are in a bit of a slump, but we, all it could take, let's look at teams like the Washington Nationals, who they got Juan Soto, and look, they went to the World Series and they won the World Series. I'm always looking at, the bright side of things. White Sox could come out of a slump at any time soon. And potentially, it
can't get any worse, Chicago fans. They can't get anywhere. They can't get the second worst record in MLB history, right? They're going to have to get a little bit better than that. So we'll see how that goes, guys.
Well, that is going to do it for us on D&T and the 773 for this week and this podcast with the UC chat, talking about the Bears head coaching search and a few other things. We appreciate you guys, tuning into this podcast. We love when you guys comment. We appreciate all the subscribers, the likes, anything you guys can do. If you guys want to shoot us a text or, comment, and anything you guys do, we'll always get back to you. And we'll be back next week talking about, in between the, Bulls games that from today into next week, Blackhawks game. We'll see what happens with the Bulls and their head Bulls. Oh my God, the Bears and their head coaching search coming up. But anything else, Dan, before we end off?
Just thankful for you guys. Appreciate all the time and hard work that everyone gives to watching us. We're still striving every week to be better and better. And like I said earlier, Bears, Bulls, Blackhawks, Sox, Cubs. it can't get any worse than this. We're all going to try to strive for greatness here, but
we will be better.
We'll give you the updates. We'll be there to give you the updates here.
Indeed. Oh, here we go. Here's the last one. What was the better sports stadium experience? The White Sox playoff home run or the Bears beating the Packers? I'm still putting the White Sox game as one of the best sporting experiences. Yes, unfortunately,
it was game-winning field goal at Lambeau. That's crazy.
It was okay. I gotta tell you, it was one of the coolest experiences that I ever been a part of. Bears being in the 9 years, but the White Sox being down 5 runs to the Astros. Obviously they lost the first 2 games in Houston. They were down 2-0. We all were like, oh my God, they're gonna lose this because it's a best of 5 series, first game to win 3. We really thought that this was gonna be, I'm sitting in the bleachers, but they, stormed a few runs back. And Leury Garcia, the guy who I did not expect at all to hit a 3-run home run, gets us up by 1 run. I remember how that crowd went electric. I think it was just the reason why I put them up because it was the home field, White Sox home field. I was in Green Bay territory when, the Bears beat the Packers. That is number 2 on my list. It is very close to number 1.
That's a good one.
White Sox game 3, that has to be number 1. It was one of the most electric atmospheres I've ever been a part of. But the Packers Bears, obviously first win in 9 years at Lambeau, has to be very close number 2. They were both great. I was very fortunate to be part of both of those, and they were both great. But that's a great question, Peter. I love that question.
Thanks for that question. Yeah, that's a good time.
You think it'd be the one, but still, even though me being more of a Cubs fan than a Sox fan, I still think that was one of the coolest that I've been a part of Chicago sports moments. For sure. Even though they did lose in game 4. They did lose in game 4, and we
don't talk about that part. It's just the wins that matter, right?
It's the wins that matter, being down 4 runs, and then, the Leury legend hitting a bomb to center field. That was super cool. But we're going to sign off, you guys. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll be back next week. We'll shoot you guys a text, or, we'll try to update you guys when we, are going to go live next week talking about the UC chat and the Bears. And we appreciate you guys, all the likes and comments and subscribers. Enjoy your weekend. Enjoy the playoff games this weekend. With the NFL, they're going to be really good games. I saw the matchups. They're going to be really great. The head coaching search. A lot of teams looking for head coaches. We'll keep you guys up to date with that one as well. And as always, we're going to say bear down. We're also going to say bulls up. Bulls up.
UC chat.
UC. That's backwards. How about, it kind of works.
UC chat. We appreciate you guys.
Thank you guys so much. Enjoy your night. And as always, have a great weekend.
Yep. Have a good one, guys.
Peace. That was great, man.
That was good. I'm glad that we got through all that conversation.